Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kagekaze, and I'm here with a public service announcement. Diablo 3 patch 105 is coming very soon, and with that comes news of a public test realm. That's right, Diablo 3 is finally getting its own public test realm, and we're going to get to preview the patch before it becomes live. This means that Blizzard will be able to get input on the patch before it gets fully implemented onto live realms. With this PTR, there will be character copy options, so you'll be able to take your existing characters, put them on the PTR in order to test the changes with your existing gear. I imagine, much like they do with World of Warcraft, that there will be pre-made characters, meaning that there should be maximum level characters available for testing changes, just in case you don't already have a level 60 of everything, like myself, since I haven't been playing enough lately. In order to get onto the PTR, first, you're going to want to log into your Battle.net account. Once there, all you have to do is click on your Diablo 3 game tab there at the top. Once you've clicked on that, you're going to see near the bottom a little box that says Public Test Realm. What you need to do is click on the blue button that says Create a PTR account. This will give you access to the PTR. Once you've clicked on that button, the page will refresh, and you'll be given the option to download the PTR game client. Now, as of right now, you can go ahead and download that PTR game client. That is actually the Diablo 3 launcher for the public test realm. When you try to run it, it will not work. Alright, here's the icon, and what will happen if you actually try to run this before the PTR becomes available? So you'll see here that it's checking for updates, just like the regular launcher would. But it's not going to be able to call home because, well, the PTR is not up yet. The character copies are also not available yet, and those will not be brought online until the patch goes live. Even though there haven't been blogs released for the two systems that are in 105 that are brand new, they are here in the patch notes. That's right, we actually have the 105 patch notes already. The two systems that have not been put out in blogs yet are the new Monster Power system and the Infernal Machine. Now, I'm going to go over some of the notes that are more interesting here in the patch, and maybe even a few highlights for individual character classes, but I'm not going to go too in-depth, as I plan to go over them more in detail when the PTR goes live. The first thing, of course, are the two systems that we have yet to hear about, and that's Monster Power and Infernal Machine. The new Monster Power is a system similar to the Player's 8 command in Diablo 2. Monster Power is a system designed to give players more control over how challenging enemies are in each difficulty. With this system, players can choose to increase the health and damage of monsters according to different power levels, and in return, they'll receive scaling bonuses to experience for heroes levels 1 through 59, as well as boosts to Magic Find and Gold Find for heroes in Inferno. These will stack above the 300% cap. The option to increase monster power will be available to all players starting at level 1 in the quest selection window, and can be adjusted separately for normal, nightmare, hell, and inferno difficulties. I like the way this system sounds. It basically means that they're going to give us the game as it is now, and keep it that way for people who like it that way. In fact, Inferno is getting slightly nerfed because of the reduction to defensive skills. If you want to bring the power back up to its current incarnation, you can bring the power level up. The current rumor is the power level can be increased to about level 2 to get the Inferno back to where it is now before the nerfs. As of right now, there is no information on how high the power level goes. The second new system is the Infernal Machine. The Infernal Machine is a device that will allow level 60 players to battle uber versions of some of Sanctuary's most nefarious bosses. While the rewards for defeating these bosses will be great, some assembly is required. Only the most powerful Nephilim can unlock the secrets to building the Infernal Machine. But once forged, the device can be used to open portals to special encounters featuring not one, but 2 bosses, which have been augmented from their original versions, both in terms of difficulty and appearance. Defeating each boss pair will provide players with extra items and gold, as well as a chance to find components for a new legendary ring. So this proves that this is exactly the Uber system that we saw from Diablo 2 that was introduced years after Diablo 2's initial release. The Uber system from Diablo 2 allowed you to fight beefed up versions of each boss, eventually leading up to an encounter with all 3 prime evils in Tristram. So now we know, and this is a first with these patch notes, that you will be fighting more than one boss at a time. I'm very interested to see how this is going to play out, especially with a boss like Belial, who is basically a screen-filling boss. You're going to have to avoid his primary attacks as well as whatever boss you might be fighting with him. I'm interested to know if this is going to be only the act-end bosses, or if bosses like Gom or Magda will be making appearances in this system. The interesting thing is, of course, they will have additional appearances, but I'm willing to bet those appearances are going to be fairly minor, probably just different skinnings of the original bosses, but we'll have to see. Honestly, I'm not too concerned if they don't look that different. But I have to say, I'm very interested in this system. I, for one, did not get to use the Uber system in Diablo 2. I only knew about it, and this looks like it could be great fun. Hopefully, I can get into it. Also, the idea behind this legendary ring, the rumors had been going around about that. We have confirmation now, and this is basically essentially like the charm that you could get in Diablo 2 for beating Uber Tristram. So, looking forward to more information on this system and seeing how we can unlock it in the future. Alright, we've got a few general changes here, and right off the bat there's one that I find very interesting. They already were talking about Resplendent Chests getting Magic Find bonuses back again. Well, it looks like they've done that and then some. Resplendent Chests now operate like elite packs in Inferno difficulty. So, not only when you open the chest will you get a reward based on your Nephilim Valor stacks, but you also will get a Nephilim Valor stack. So, now you have even more reason to explore the world and explore dungeons when you are level 60. It's not just about elites anymore. You're going to want to find those resplendent chests. Continuing in that vein and helping with exploration is that major in-game events will now grant 1 stack of Nephilim Valor when completed by level 60 characters. If they're completed in a multiplayer game, all eligible characters in the party will receive the buff regardless of whether they've participated in the event or were close to the event's location. The major in-game events in Inferno that dropped a special chest or a unique monster will now also drop additional loot for every stack of Nephilim Valor a player has active at the time at the event's completion. Several events have had unique monsters added to them for this purpose. This is great. They're increasing exploration in Inferno by a great deal here. You can actually now feel good about going out and doing the random events in the world and not feel like you're hindering your progress. You're going to get additional rewards for completing them, and you're going to get additional stacks of Nephilim Valor, and of course that probably means more experience. So I, for one, really like this idea, as I like doing the in-game events. To help facilitate the new Paragon level system, Experience Shrines will now be active in Inferno difficulty. Not only that, but 2 new shrines have been added to all difficulty modes. The Empowering Shrine, which increases resource regeneration and reduced cooldowns, and the Fleeting Shrine, increasing movement speed and pickup radius. Pet classes, as well as people that like to play in single player with followers, will like to hear that they have changed the way that followers and pets AI work. They will no longer attack enemies that are in their idle state unless the player is within 10 yards of that enemy. This is very good to hear, especially if you're getting ready to attack a treasure goblin that's sitting there idle and you don't want to hit it just yet, and your pets go off and decide to aggro it for you. Also here in the general notes are the changes to crowd control effects that we've heard about before, and a confirmation that snare effects will also be reduced a bit here. Elite monsters used to have a reduction to snares in all difficulty modes. As you can see here, normal difficulty had a 20% reduction, Nightmare 30, Hell 40. It looks like Inferno had 40 as well, so they've dropped those down. There's no longer a reduction in normal anymore. It's 15% in Nightmare, and just a scant 25% reduction to snares in Hell and Inferno. So not only are crowd control effects coming back, but snares will actually be useful against some of those pretty quick elite monsters. Looks like there's going to be a few quality of life improvements on the auction house. I highly suggest going over those if you use the auction house. But some other interesting changes are happening as well, specifically with Battle.net tie-in. One that may be a little controversial is the Friend of Friend feature, which has been available in other games. Specifically, WoW had this. You you can now find the friends of your friends and help you find real ID friends that way. Now keep in mind, this system, which got a lot of heat when it first got put out into World of Warcraft, does not show the email address and therefore the Battle.net login ID of the friend of friend. It simply shows their name. Of course, for some people that might be problematic. I believe that they will offer the ability to hide those going forward. It looks like they're just testing it for now, and this is probably one of the big reasons why they're doing a PTR this time rather than just putting it straight out. With these Battle.net changes, they probably need to make sure everything works before it gets hooked into live servers. Included with that is a delivery system that allows Blizzard to send items directly to players. Now, I find this interesting. This could be used for many reasons. It might be a way for them to recover lost items or to help facilitate the recovery of lost items. For example, in Warcraft, if you got hacked, lost all your items, most of it would be brought back to you in the form of an in-game mail. What other uses they might have for this, we'll have to wait and see. Also, for the social side of it, achievements are now basically linked in the in-game hotbar and can be linked in chat. Your banners, interestingly enough now, can be customized while you're in town, in-game. You don't have to leave a game to change your banner. And it looks like they're also making good on their promise to try and make the chat pane a little more usable and visible. They basically make it so you can change the font color and size. Items that you click on in the chat will now also have the comparison tooltips compared to what you're currently wearing. And it says there's been several changes to the in-game chat to increase usability, which of course is very unspecific, but I'll go over that when I get into the PTR and try and see what they've added to it. While I'm not going to go over every single change to the classes right now, I am going to go over some that look interesting to me, and the first thing I saw is right here under the Barbarian active skills, Battle Rage. Now, Battle Rage is the ability to enter a rage which increases your damage by 15% and your critical chance by 3 for 30 seconds. It's a skill that a lot of barbarians, especially who are damage focused, like to use. Duration has been increased from 30 seconds to 120 seconds. That's quite the buff. It's making it an ability that you don't have to monitor as much. I kind of like it. At the same time, I wonder how it will affect its usefulness, as a lot of people already like to use that. I wonder if it's going to make it feel more mandatory. Another interesting change for barbarians is that the critical hit chance of Hammer of the Ancients. Hammer of the Ancients used to give you a 5% increased critical chance for that skill. It's been redesigned. Critical hit chance is now based on the amount of fury the player has when the skill is activated. So for every 5 fury that you have, Hammer of the Ancients has a 1% increased critical hit chance. This may improve the value of maximum fury gear. I see this being very interesting and might be something to look forward to building around. Another major change to Barbarians, this one was talked about in their developer blog, but I wanted to bring it up here because I didn't really talk about it before, and that's the change to Leap Iron Impact. Iron Impact would before grant you a 300%, no, it won't show here, increase to your armor for a few seconds. It's been changed to only grant 100%, but that's per enemy hit. So if you hit a group of enemies, like 5 enemies, let's say, that's 500% bonus armor. So what that means is you can't just use Leap as a cooldown without hitting anything, or a defensive cooldown without hitting anything. But if you like to use Leap to jump into a big group of enemies, like I do, you're going to get a lot more armor for 3 seconds now, which means you can leap in, get into the thick of it, deal out a bunch more damage while taking less damage. I like this change. Whirlwind Barbarians might not like to hear this one. It looks like the Sprint rune, Run Like the Wind, has had a slight nerf to it in the form of a coefficient change. The proc coefficient has been reduced from 0.2 to 0.08. So basically, you had a 20% chance for the tornadoes in that Sprint rune to proc things such as your life on hit, or anything affected by critical chance, such as increasing the length of Wrath of the Berserker. This is now only an 8% chance, so keep that in mind. Whirlwind Barbarians, you may have been slightly nerfed here. We'll have to take a look and see how this actually affects people. As a lot of people play this build, I'm sure once the PTR comes out, we'll be hearing a lot about it soon. While there was a nerf to the Whirlwinds from Sprint, Whirlwind itself has actually gotten a slight buff in the form of reduced Fury cost. It has gone from 16 Fury to 9. Interesting change, and may make me want to try Whirlwind on my own. I don't necessarily want to go into Tornado builds. There's a lot of them out there. But I have liked some of the other Whirlwind runes, and I'm looking forward to trying that. Another interesting change for Whirlwind is that Blood Funnel, which used to give 1% health for every crit, has been increased to 2%. So they've basically doubled the life given back by Blood Funnel. This is a great change, I think, as it was an ability that I was looking into using with my Whirlwind for survivability purposes and found that it just wasn't quite giving me exactly what I needed. I'm going to have to try this out on the PTR. Quick overview of the Barbarian passives show that Animosity gives a bonus Fury regeneration, increase from 10% to 20%. Inspiring Presence has had its life regeneration doubled in the form of from a 1% to 2% maximum life per second. And Unforgiving has Fury regeneration quadrupled. It has increased to 2 Fury every second, up from 1 Fury every 2 seconds. I am a big supporter of that change, as I found Unforgiving to be, well, a little forgettable. Granted, it made it so that you wouldn't lose Fury in combat, but 1 Fury every 2 seconds wasn't really a lot. Alright, Demon Hunters, it's your turn, and it looks like there are some interesting changes coming your way as well. Right off the bat, Bola Shot has had its radius increased by, well, more than double, it looks like. It's gone from 7 yards to 17, so those of you who didn't really like Bola Shot before, you might want to reconsider it. It's got a decent range now. Another massive change is Companions. It looks like we've had a redesign here. They talked about this in the blog. Let's take a look at what they've done. Companions now have a 30-second cooldown on them. Each Companion's attack has had a cooldown reduction, so from 1.5 to 2 seconds is what it used to be. They can now attack every second. Their weapon damage has also been increased from 30 to 38, but they cannot critically hit anymore. But to compensate for that, your Companions will now scale with your attack speed. Looking specifically at the Wolf Companion has been redesigned to be more of a durable pet. It's had its durability brought to around the levels of the zombie dogs. It has also been given a new attack as a 120-degree cleave with a 10-yard radius that hits for 94% weapon damage. The Spider Companion has been given a similar buff as the Wolf Companion. It is slightly more durable than the Wolf Companion and has a new attack. 120-degree cleave with a 10-yard radius that hits for 38% weapon damage and slows every enemy that it hits for 60% by 2 seconds. The last pet to be given this permanent pet change has been the Boar, and this one has even more durability than the Spider, making the Boar your tanking type companion, your Spider your utility, and your Wolf your DPS. He has a new attack that's a single target attack that hits for 38% weapon damage. He provides 155% life per second and a 15% bonus to all resistances for the Demon Hunter at level 60. Not only being a tank, but helping you survive. Here's an interesting change to Evasive Fire. The Shrapnel rune has been replaced with a new rune called Hardened. This is the first time they've actually fully replaced a skill. Shrapnel used to give you a little bit of AoE from Evasive Fire, but now we get Hardened, which increases your armor by 50% for 3 seconds and replaces the backflip. So instead of flipping backwards when you hit an enemy that's close to you, you're going to get additional armor. A rather interesting change, especially since it changes the skill from an offensive one to a more defensive one. Here's a change that I was looking forward to when I heard about it in the developer blog, the Sentry getting an overhaul. It has been changed from a discipline-based skill to a hatred-based skill, costing instead of 10 discipline, 30 hatred. The damage of the Sentry has been increased from 55 to 88%, and you can now have 2 turrets active at once. To compensate for this, an 8-second cooldown has been added. The Sentries can no longer critical hit due to this as well. What's not listed here, as it's in the passive section, is that the Custom Engineering passive will allow you to have a 3rd Sentry out on the battlefield. Due to this change of giving them a cooldown, the skill rune Vigilant Watcher has been changed as well, which reduces the cooldown of the Sentry by 2 seconds instead of increasing the duration, meaning you can put a Sentry down once every 6 seconds with that rune.
Shadow Power has been given a shot in the arm in most of its incarnations. The biggest change here is that it's gone from a 20% lifesteal to a 15% lifesteal. However, the duration has been increased. Rather than only lasting 3 seconds, it lasts now 5 seconds, meaning it's a little bit easier to use. Looks like we have another rune replacement. Bandolier, which used to allow you to have 6 spike traps out at a time instead of 3, has been replaced with Echoing Blast. Echoing Blast gives your spike traps 3 charges with a minimum delay of 1 second between each explosion, and deals damage as poison. That's an interesting change and kind of keeps the spirit of the rune. Previously, I didn't really care for Bandolier, as I found it was kind of unnecessary to be able to put 6 down. Usually in the middle of combat, you're not going to have time to put them all down. It's great for creating a field prior to combat, but it just felt like it made the skill a little bit harder to use in that respect. In this case, it will basically give you that effect because each trap will go off 3 times, but it still has to have that 1 second delay. But that means you can kite enemies back and forth over the trap, or just keep larger enemies on top of it. Demon Hunters seem to be seeing some love here, as we've got yet another rune replacement, as well as a buff in the arm to Strafe. Movement speed from Strafe has been increased from 65% to 75%, so you can get away a little faster. Hatred cost has been reduced from 16 to 12. And the Equilibrium rune has been completely replaced. Equilibrium used to give a 20% attack speed increase while used. Now it's Ember Strafe, which leaves behind a fire trail that deals 65% weapon damage per second for 2 seconds. Basically allowing you to move away while leaving a damage field behind you, so you can use it to kite enemies and still do damage. As well as all variants allow you to walk through enemies while active now. Any comparisons to Whirlwind in the past are now pretty accurate, as you can go through enemies with both skills now. A few passive changes to Demon Hunters as well here. Custom Engineering, not only does it allow you to have a 3rd sentry out, but also increases the maximum number of spike traps you can have out to 6, effectively removing the need for Bandolier, which is probably why it was replaced. Numbing Traps, the damage reduction has been reduced from 25 to 20%, but it now also works with grenades and sentries. Perfectionist now also increases life, armor, and resistances by 10%. And Thrill of the Hunt has seen a slight redesign. It is now more effective, as instead of happening only 10 seconds, it happens every 7. It now affects your next Hatred Spender and roots all targets hit by that Hatred Spender for 2 seconds. They can only be rooted once every 7 seconds, and it does not affect Sentry. They also added the buff icon for Thrill of the Hunt that used to be there in beta and for some reason was removed in live. Monk's only seeing some minor changes this time around. We'll go over the passives here real quick. The Beacon of Itar has its cooldown reduction increase from 15% to 20%. Near-Death Experience has had its cooldown reduced from 90 seconds to 60 seconds, so you'll get that every minute now. Pacifism will now work on freeze and immobilize effects, but the tooltip will not mention freeze, because freeze is classified as a stun. So now when you're frozen, you'll get that 75% damage reduction. Along with the defensive cooldown changes that have been made, Resolve has had its damage reduction reduced from 25% to 20%, and Seize the Initiative has had the conversion of dexterity and armor reduced from 100% to 50%. Not too much here for Witch Doctors either, just a few minor changes, although the Wall of Zombies one looks pretty nice. The cooldown on the skill has been reduced from 25 seconds to 20 seconds, and the skill rune Pile On has been changed as well. It used to be 745% weapon damage with a 25 second cooldown. It's now a 500% weapon damage with 10 second cooldown, and the radius has been increased. Passive changes show that Gruesome Feasts now shows a buff icon when you have active stacks. Thank you very much for that. That is one thing I did ask for in some of my videos, being able to see when I actually have intelligence stacks on me. Fetish Psychopaths has had its proc chance increase from 3 to 5%, making that a bit more useful. And with the defensive changes, we're having our damage reduction reduced from 20% to 15% on Jungle Fortitude. There's quite a few changes here for the Wizard, but a lot of them look like simple adjustments. There is one change here, though, for the Familiar. It looks like the Wizards are also getting a rune replacement. The Familiar rune, Dartling, has been replaced with Vigoron. The Dartling used to be a familiar that would have a projectile that could pierce through the enemy 100% of the time. This one now gives you life regeneration every second, replacing yet again a offensive ability with a defensive one. Ice Armor is getting a survivability buff in the form of damage reduction. Ice Armor will now reduce damage from melee attacks by 8%. Thought I would bring this one up since I've seen a few threads out there not liking Meteor that much. Meteor has been changed a bit here, and hopefully this will make some of you want to try it out now. The delay between the cast and impact has been reduced from 2 seconds down to 1.25 seconds, so it'll be a lot easier to hit your target. The arcane power has also been reduced from 60 to 50. A couple other changes that were simple adjustments, but it looks like they were significant enough that I wanted to mention them, is that Magic Missile is getting a base damage increase from 110 to 125, as well as all of its runes getting an increase, and Ray of Frost is getting a buff. Movement speed reduction has been increased from 30 to 60. The slow duration has been increased from 3 seconds to 4 seconds. And the arcane power cost has been reduced from 20 to 16 per period. A couple changes to the utility skill Slow Time. The cooldown has been reduced from 20 to 15 seconds. The movement speed reduction has been increased from 30 to 60%. The rune Time Shell, which would reduce the size of it but increase the slow, no longer reduces the size, so it stays the same size and still gives you that 80% slow. Changes for Spectral Blade. Looks like the weapon damage is getting increased from 135 to 165. The angle of damage was at 60, it's now at 90, so you've got a much larger degree there to hit people with. And the range has been increased from 10 yards to 15. Now, because of this, they have actually decided not to increase the range of thrown blades. That will still stay at 20 yards. So you're only going to get a 5-yard extension from that rather than a 10. Added to that, the skill rune Deep Cuts. Weapon damage from bleed has been increased, and Healing Blades has had the critical hit requirement removed. So Healing Blades will now always give you 8% life done, or damage done as life. Storm Armor getting an interesting change. Storm Armor used to be kind of a retaliation armor which would hurt enemies that attacked you. Instead, now it's been redesigned to periodically deal 100% weapon damage as lightning to nearby enemies. This has also affected the various runes that come with it. There's been a defensive change to Teleport, which is kind of surprising considering most builds actually do use Teleport. But Teleport will now break roots. There's only one passive change for wizards, and that's Unstable Anomaly, but this is a pretty nice change. The threshold has been increased from 20 to 30%, meaning that you don't have to lose as much life for it to kick in. And it now also heals the player for 45% of their maximum life, and will slow the targets that are knocked back by 60% for 3 seconds. Items in the game getting some changes. Well, first off, the cast time for identifying rare items has been reduced to 1 second. Oh, that's nice, considering how many rares you can get nowadays. I like that. The cast time for identifying legendary items has been increased to 4 seconds. I guess that's to facilitate more surprise and wonderment when you're getting these new legendaries. But Blizzard has hurt us. This is a change that has been requested in the forums several times, especially by people that move quickly and through Inferno. They've missed some legendaries and they didn't realize it before. Until some people started streaming and their audience would let them know, hey, you missed something there. So now, the location of legendary items will be marked by a column of light, as well as ping on your minimap the first time they drop. A new sound has also been added. A change that I'm not 100% sure on is that affixes on items will now roll their level based on the level of the monster that is killed, rather than the item's level. So, for example, if the item level is 60, it may get item level 61 procs on it based on if you're in Inferno or not. So that means this could be used to facilitate the monster power system. Although I'm not sure if the monster power system will actually increase the level of the monster or not, or simply just increase the stats of said monster. This is one I'll have to keep an eye on, and if anyone has any ideas, I'm absolutely open to hear them. Class-specific items will now drop more often. Items below eye level 58 will no longer drop in Inferno. I'm sure many of us are very happy to hear that. I know I am, especially in Act 1 when they were more plentiful, but it's nice to know that in higher acts in Inferno you're no longer going to see these lower item levels. Square quality gems will also no longer drop, and monk class skills will now roll on shields to help out monks that want to use them. Moving from items to crafting, we can see a few quality of life changes here. For one, crafting materials will now stack to 500. I think that's going to save me a ton of space because I already have so many materials in one of my tabs right now that tab is almost full. So I'll be happy to be able to condense that a bit. Jeweler designs that drop in the world will now show up as rare quality, basically yellow, to make them more visible. And the salvage skill will now use required equip level of items instead of the base level to determine the component. So we have a couple examples here. For example, we have an item that's eye level 60 but has a reduced level requirement to bring it to 52. That item will not salvage into the level 60 components. Instead, it will salvage into hell crafting materials instead of Inferno. This is being done to accommodate the change of item affixes that roll on the monsters level rather than the items level as was talked about before. They've also given us a way to get more high-level crafting materials. We can change crafting reagents to the next highest level at a ratio of 10 to 1, and this includes Tomes of Training into the Tomes of Secrets at another ratio of 10 to 1. Followers getting a little bit of love. The Templar, a few changes here. The heal skill will now heal both player and the Templar instead of just one or the other, and will be cast more often as it will now cast below 75% instead of below 50%. The mana regeneration of Inspire has been increased from 2 to 4, and the cooldown of Intervene has been reduced, as well as the threshold being reduced. Scoundrel getting a little bit more damage, his base damage being increased from 25% to 40%. Hysteria getting a cooldown reduction from 6 to 5 seconds. And the weapon damage of the initial hit of Poison Bolts has been increased from 40 to 100%, and the poison will now deal 40% weapon damage over 2 instead of over 3. My current favorite companion for my Barbarian, the Enchantress, seeing some love too. Disorient, effective radius increased from 4 yards to 6 and the cooldown reduced from 45 to 25 seconds. Mass Control has had its cooldown reduced from a minute to 30 seconds. The armor bonus of Powered Armor, though, has been reduced from 15 to 5%. This is probably in line with the other defensive changes we've seen. And Reflect Missiles has been replaced with Missile Ward. Missile Ward reduces the incoming damage from range attacks by 6%. If you look at the original, it was a shield that would reflect incoming projectiles, so now we get a damage reduction instead. Also, this may make some of you sad, but the Magic Find and Gold Find values inherited from the followers will now respect the 300% cap as they were meant to. A few general changes to monsters taking place here, some of them kind of surprising. Specifically, additional health per monster in multiplayer games has been reduced from 75% to 70%. I find this rather interesting as 75% has always been the baseline for normal, and I didn't really think that needed to change, and they decided that needs to come down now. I am wondering if this is due to monster power. I'm not 100% sure. It is a minor change, so I can't really complain too much, but it is still a nerf to monsters. The damage and health values of monsters levels 50 to 63 have also been reduced, but this one specifically states that it's to coincide with the monster power changes. As you can see, there's a few changes to AI, including making sand sharks more manageable. Also, pets will have a bit more damage reduction from some AoEs from specific monsters, such as the Fire Mage Fire Pools or Wood Wraith Spore Clouds. A few bug fixes include that damage caused by reflex damage can't be dodged anymore. So you might want to be aware of that, especially if you're a hardcore player. If you rely on dodge to get past the reflect damage effects on monsters, that's not going to work anymore. Good news is that fire chain monsters will no longer link if the monsters are burrowed. Now, looking at these last bug fixes, there's a few things here that I gotta say I think should have always been there, but I'm glad they're there now. Let's look at the first. Shrines will now buff all players that are within the shrine's radius or in the same level area. Hallelujah! That is nice, because there have been a few times where either I've used or a friend has used a shrine and it was just out of range and you didn't get it. So now, as long as you're in the same area, everyone's going to get that shrine. Also, Nephilim Valor stacks are restored whenever a player rejoins the last multiplayer game he or she was disconnected from. Again, hallelujah. Honestly, I haven't been disconnected a lot lately, but there were a few times where I got disconnected and got right back in and was frustrated to no end that I lost my Nephilim Valor stacks. Well, there's definitely a few more changes and bug fix here, but nothing really that I need to highlight, I don't think. I would honestly suggest going and reading the patch notes yourself if you're interested. Lots of changes here. Honestly, I think most of them good. But we'll have to see, as this has been kind of controversial, the changes to the defense as well as nerfs to Inferno. But it looks like the monster power system is going to be the thing that helps everybody and that's going to make everybody happy. Since a lot of people have wanted to keep the difficulty up there, it looks like not only are you going to get the difficulty back, but you can increase it. I see a win-win here. So we'll definitely be looking at this patch when it comes out on the PTR, and I'll be more than happy to report in on it. Until then, this is Kagekaze looking at the patch notes for Diablo 3 patch 105. Remember to go pick up your PTR if you're interested. I'll see you there. See you next time, guys.